Hey everyone, welcome to Hitting with Holly, the Todd Hollandsworth podcast here on ManOn2nd Baseball. Hey, this is a big day for us because Holly is remote. As we're kind of growing this podcast, stay with us, everyone. We're going to grow this. We're having a lot of fun with it. But Holly's up in Alabama, in Birmingham, Alabama, right now, as his son is playing in a travel tournament. And let's bring Todd Hollandsworth in. Holly, tell us a little bit about the tournament and what you're seeing so far.
It's a great tournament. We just started yesterday, so it was good to shake off some of the rust. We didn't have our best showing yesterday, but we're in Alabama. We're in Birmingham, wood bat tournament. All variations. My son plays for the East Coast Sox, so we're up here, and we got to play at the university yesterday, which was an awful lot of fun. All turf field. The boys love it. But again, there was some rust on them, and that's the thing. I know that we've been having a lot of rain in South Florida, and that's what Trey certainly felt yesterday, was a little bit behind, and that's what he was working towards. So I'm really excited for today for him. I think he's going to have a great day today. We miss so much, when that rain starts in South Florida, it'll turn into a monsoon, and really all you do is get cage time inside, so you just don't get as much field time. So that's what we're hoping for. So we ventured about 10 hours north to get out of the South Florida rain, and so far it's worked.
Well, that's great. One of our missions here, as we're growing the Hitting with Holly, podcast and the instructional videos, is preparation for the travel player, the high school player, and younger, and the college, and obviously you're touching on the pros as well. But Holly, obviously, when you talk about that, you already have a couple of videos up on very instructive pointers on hitting and so forth and drills. So what do you do? Take someone through. If weather's going good, could you dry swing in the garage? What are some of the things you do to stay sharp for a tournament like this?
I have always found that just even if you're dealing with tons and tons of rain and you don't even have the ability to get out on the field or even get into the cages or whatever the case may be, always pick up your bat and grip your bat and feel your bat. You can talk to all the professionals like myself. There is a feel to this sport. We call it baseball DNA. We call it, that extra sense that you have as you get higher and closer to the big leagues. You start to develop this. It's, this baseball IQ. Scouts talk about it an awful lot. It's not something that you can measure. It's not a number that you put on, but it's certainly things that you pick up. And really the kind of things that we all had about us was a day without baseball just really didn't sit well with us. So what we would do is, pick up your bat, go into the garage. Last night, Trey was swinging his bat right here in the apartment. And that's just it. We clear out some space. You grab a pillow, throw it on the ground, call it home plate. And, get yourself over it, get your feel, get your timing, get your vision, start to visualize. A lot of visualization is very, very important. I used to always, no matter what I was doing, whether I was working off a tee, whether I was doing soft toss or short screen, anything that I was working on was always incorporate some element of visualization of what is actually going on. The pitcher pitching to you, maybe even from different arm angles, but seeing what you want to do with the baseball, where you want your fingers to be, where you want your balance to be. I talk about it all the time. Tony Gwynn used to tell me all about it, the things that are so much important, leading with that knob and keeping your balance. Hitters that, I saw a bunch of this yesterday, a lot of kids falling over the plate. What does that tell you? The first thing it tells you is that they're out of balance. They're going to be out of whack. And whenever you start changing bat angles, or you change your swing, or even your feet can change your bat angle depending on how you're rotating through the zone. And so if you're off balance, you're going to ultimately change that bat angle and you're going to get different results. You're going to see a lot more foul balls. You're not going to get your pitch. And when you get your pitch, you might foul it off. And, I tell my kids constantly, I said, you're going to go into every at bat and you're going to get something to hit. But the key to this game is learning and teaching yourself how to consistently hit it. When you get the mistake, don't miss it. Because if you miss it, then you got to battle. And that's when you're dealing with the curveballs and the change ups and all the other things that come. So, think creatively. And that's what I really do encourage a lot of kids to do today, is to think creatively. Sometimes it can even just be wiffle ball inside the house or something that's soft. We used to take socks, roll up socks and hit socks. But the idea is just that hand-eye coordination and continually doing it. Baseball, baseball bats, these guys, you got to be born with them in your hand. And it's like, you don't want to put it down. And that's really what it comes down to. So when you're dealing with the rain, you don't have a game that day, I would always encourage you to at least take 10, 15 minutes, go into the garage, find a space, hold your bat, feel your bat, and just kind of set yourself up for what you believe, your next game. Set yourself up for your next game with that in mind, with some visualization.
No, that's an excellent point. You have me thinking maybe a little advice to travel people, because you don't really want to like take a bat to an Airbnb and bat slips out of your hand. All of a sudden you're breaking a lamp or a TV.
Make sure
what do you think?
everything's out of the way.
Holly, what do you think about packing along a wiffle ball bat? Just
All the
for
time,
something
yeah.
like that, just to have that in the bag as to swing around a hotel room or an Airbnb or an apartment or wherever you might be.
Joe, those are vital. I mean, anything to be creative. When I was a kid growing up in New Jersey, there would be many times, and our seasons were different. We were raised differently. These kids today, it's like you're all in with baseball. But when I was growing up, we played different sports, so there were different seasons. And I always just remember, we didn't travel. There wasn't travel ball like it is today. And honestly, I would go around wherever I was. If I was on vacation with my parents or whatever I was doing, I'd find a stick and pretend that stick was my baseball bat. But to your point, yes, wiffle ball bats, anything that can kind of provide you the traction in that thought process. And that's really what you want to get yourself into is, who am I? What do I want to be? What's my swing path? Any of those things certainly are encouraging you. Baseball is like riding a bike. It's very simple. You got to do it an awful lot. You got to get on it. You got to stay on it, and you got to do it, especially the hitters. The pitchers, I think it's obviously a little bit different. Doing your defensive work, that's obviously a little bit more organized. But the one thing that we always talk about, because it's the stinking hardest thing to do in the world, is hit. And so, I was always visualizing, even as a young kid, Steve Carlton on the mound. What am I going to do when he throws his nasty slider, and how am I going to keep my front shoulder in? It's just things like that would always, these thoughts would always just be running through my mind of how to do hitting, a little bit better. So anything that encourages that, I see that as a great positive. It doesn't always have to be organized. It doesn't have to be, a clinic. It doesn't have to be you searching out the gym and all these other things. Those things are all great. But the guys who really want this, you can see it in their eyes. It's something that they search for. And, Joe, I'm sure you've probably heard the phrase a million times. This kid was born with a bat in his hands. Well, those are the guys that really just understand how hard this is, but that it gets more comfortable and a lot easier the more that we do it. And you can't take out 8 hours of batting practice a day, but you do tend to at times maybe obsess over hitting a little bit, and that's really what it comes down to.
No, those are great points. You have me thinking back, because I know in a lot of conversations through the years with in big league pitchers, ex-big league pitchers, Josh Beckett, he would talk. I'd have conversations when I see Josh at, on the road, and I had a conversation with Josh and Al Leiter one time in a hotel after a game in Atlanta. And Al was talking with, he was a real good mentor. And even though Al's second stint with the Marlins didn't go real well, I think it was about 05, Josh's last year, but he really resonated with Beckett. And he talked a lot about 1996, 97, when Al Leiter was a teammate with Kevin Brown. Some of our older viewers will know Kevin Brown was a 20-game winner at one point. A great pitcher in the 90s. And they would, just sit there, even though Al was left-handed and Kevin Brown right-handed, they'd show grips. Hey, show me your cutter grip, or show me your slider grip, fastball grip. Where do you put your fingers on the seams? So along that vein, hitting, obviously you listen to what Holly says, it's the same thing. You get your bat, you can work on your hand placement, and just see how much choking up, how much, whatever. How does the bat feel? Obviously speak to that.
Well, Joe, and that's a great point, because this is exactly what I drive home. We always talk about the parallels between pitching and hitting, and there are really millions of them. And most people say, Holly, what are you talking about? But there are very similar distinctions, even between pitching. The line that we play on, the line from the mound to home plate. They're obviously trying to get you out. They're trying to attack the zone, and so are you as a hitter. You're trying to attack the zone, and that's kind of how we both share thoughts. But it's a great point that you bring up, talking about Josh and Al, and even Kevin Brown, talking about different grips. With hitters, it's the same thing. We're gripping a bat. And so we're talking about, different grips, lining up our knuckles, strong grips, grip that can at times be a little bit more passive. We talk about bad angles. Pitchers talk about angles. Pitchers talk about strides. We talk about strides. You see what I'm saying there? I mean, there's a million parallels between the two. Yes, it's different. And yes, it's them versus us as hitters. But the idea is very much the same. I always found, I'm sure you've heard a million hitters tell you this. I learned so much from sitting next to pitchers in the dugout all the time, listening to their minds work. How do I want to get hitters out? What is this guy showing me? You're not going to believe what I just saw this guy doing in the on-deck circle. And then you'd hear a pitcher say, this is exactly how I'm going to attack him. I see that his hands are leaving his body. He's got a huge hole underneath the knob. I'm going to pound him with fastballs in. And next thing you know, you watch it play out, and you're like, whoa, this guy knows what he's doing, and he knows what he's thinking. And he's going out there to execute. So as hitters, it's very, very much the same thing. But it does take me to a good place, especially with youth baseball, Joe. I talk about it a lot. And it's the idea of earning the ability to look for more. And I know over our first few videos, we've talked about home run swings and bad angles and some different things. But I've really found, and I'm sure that even the guys that I played with that you mentioned, Al Leiter and Kevin Brown, Josh, of course, we played together in 03. But, the idea being that you kind of earn your way to the advancement of that. That's not something that you just jump to. And what I mean by that is, you look for the staples in your game that are your strengths, and then you build on those. Those can't stop being your strengths. Those are your God-given talents. Those are what you're constantly building on. But at the same time, you do want to work on your weaknesses. You don't want to all of a sudden become obsessed with, because I'm really struggling with the slider low and away. Well, guess what? Most hitters struggle with the slider low and away. You don't want to obsess over struggling, against that and trying to defend it, because you certainly don't want to get away from your strengths. So it is a combination conversation of always working to what God gave you as far as your ability is concerned, and what you can do with the baseball bat and what you can do it on a baseball field. You're always looking to advance it and make it better, but at the same time acknowledging your weaknesses and then working on those weaknesses so that you can defend them better. You don't want to become a great low and away slider hitter. It's gonna open you up to all sorts of vulnerabilities as a hitter, but you do need to be better at defending it. So you teach yourself those things. And listen, those are all things that we work on. But again, it's part of that journey and part of that mindset that we have, as we want to get better and better and better each and every day.
No, this is really good stuff. Holly, I want to talk about approach. You always hear everybody, oh, the guy's got a good approach, or that guy doesn't have an approach. A lot of times, where we see it at the big league level, that's certainly the highest of levels and all the thought process. But let's take it down to a typical 17, 16U, 17U, 16U, 18U type player in a tournament. Obviously, a lot of these kids aren't seeing the pitching. They're seeing pitching for the first time, I should say. And you might hear, oh, he's a hard thrower. Or you watch his warm up, and you can see, oh, he spun and made a good breaking ball, or whatever. But what do you talk to your boys about, and the young players about an approach at the travel level?
Well, I'll give you an example, and I think this is a good place to start. I do always get back to the basics of what we're looking to accomplish. The first thing that you certainly, we learned yesterday. Trey learned this yesterday. So, he plays for the East Coast Sox, and his team is out of Mississippi. And, the first thing that you realize is we were playing at the University of Alabama, Birmingham yesterday. And, all these 15-year-olds are storming the field. Here they come, and they look out, and they're like 330 down the line, 390 to center field with a batter's eye, There wasn't a kid on the field yesterday that was going to hit a ball out. That's just a fact. And that's the first thing. So, what you look for is, okay, how do I win? How do I win at this? This is a big field. I got a lot of ground to cover in the outfield, different things that certainly can advance your opportunity for success that day. And as I was telling Trey and some of the kids as they were getting ready to play the game, where do you guys see the missing, where's the biggest space on this field? Where do you think the most hits are? And about half the kids kind of gave me an answer. They were like, well, it's turf, so it's faster. I said, that's true. You're right. There's an advantage on that. So if you hit the ball hard, line drives, most of them are going to get through. But with that being said, you look out to center field from home plate and you say, wow, there's the center fielder. And he seems like he's got a lot of space. And one thing that you do tend to see in youth baseball is that the corner outfielders drift towards the line. Now, why they do that, I don't know, because it's always been a pet peeve of mine, because they're not really lining themselves up properly, at least as far as covering, the outfield. And so you've got, 3 15-year-olds that are going to try to cover basically a big league outfield or even a Division I college program outfield. And the two corner outfielders like to kind of line themselves up behind the shortstop and the second baseman or closer to the lines. But what it does is it really does put the center fielder on an island, and he's out there. And so I've said, it's so obvious because you watch the game play out. And yesterday, I think that there was 10 hits in the ball game, and I would be willing to bet that 7 or 8 of them were into center field because it's just where there's the most space. But what does that teach you as a hitter? You say to yourself, okay, well, if all of this space is there, and I know I'm not hitting one out because 15-year-olds are not, putting balls 375 over the fence. Every now and again we see it, but most of these kids can't do it. You say, okay, well, where do I find success? And you say, well, it would be the middle of the field. Well, what does that tell us as a hitter? Okay, I want to stay square. I want to stay through the baseball. I definitely don't want to get in the box and start pulling off the ball. I certainly don't want to get in the box and, overcompensate to one side or the other. So directionally, you should be thinking, here comes the pitcher. He's right there. I want to stay square. I want to stay striding through the baseball, and I want to stay through the middle of the field, leading with that knob, maybe even keeping your hands a little bit closer to your body. But there's a lot more room for error in center field than there is anywhere else on the field, especially in a 15U game. So it played itself out. I think a few of the kids came up to me even afterwards and were like, wow, you're right. You see there's a lot more space out there. Balls just, even short fly balls seem to fall in because you have one kid who's out there all by himself. So if it were me, I'd be pushing my outfielders, my corner outfielders, a little bit closer to the center fielder to defend that a little bit better. But it's common. You just generally see it. And these kids, the corner guys, always seem to drift towards the lines, and they guard the lines for whatever reason. But there's always a ton of space out there. But it encourages that use the middle of the field approach. It's where the most space is. But that's also a good lesson as a hitter. I want to stay through the baseball. I can defend the strike zone. It probably buys you a little bit of time as far as letting the ball track into the hitting zone and putting yourself into a position to find those base hits in the middle of the field. Once you get your rhythm, excuse me, once you get your rhythm, you really just want to kind of expand from there and use the middle of the field. And once you start finding that success, as I see with every kid, confidence is everything. And once the confidence comes, once you get those hits, your game starts to unravel a little bit. Things start going your way. You can open up your game to other ideas that you've got in your mind of what you can ultimately do. But I do use that as a baseline for young hitters. Use the middle of the field. Stay through the middle of the field. You're going to find success there. You're going to find singles and doubles out there. And once you start getting that consistently, then maybe you can start tinkering with your swing a little bit, or add a little bit of juice there, and maybe try to, pull the ball a little bit more. But as far as instant results, it's probably the safest bet.
That is really good point, because it got me thinking when I just, in May, I went to Fort Myers for about a week and did the state Florida baseball semifinals and finals. And they play those games at the home in Fort Myers, the home of the Minnesota Twins, the spring training home.
Right.
So that's a big league spring training facility. And a lot of these kids, and they're strong kids, and a few hit it out, but they didn't hit it out to dead center. And a lot of those balls that I saw that these kids hit in the regular season that would be homers weren't even reaching the warning track, and they're being run down. So I'm thinking some of those big swings, some of those kids on the pull side, yeah, if you got it just right, you could hit it 380 or whatever and hit the part at 360 and you get a homer. But I was thinking this would, if I were a coach at the high school level and I knew I'm going to Fort Myers, I may have a little bit hitting. Not that you want to get away from what you do, because I don't want to have my kids overthink, but I may be, keeping in mind that just, lift and launch may not be the greatest formula here.
Right.
Because one thing I've noticed, and you probably see it too at the high school level, the outfielders run balls down. These elite outfielders can run a ball down if it's hanging up in the air. But as you note, if you're covering a lot of space and that's a sinking line drive, or a ball in the gap, then you're looking at extra bases or that flare hit.
Well, Joe, when I was in the big leagues, the 12 years I was in the big leagues, no matter what organization I was in, and we were taught this, just daily with the Dodgers, coming up with the Dodgers through the minor league system and all the instruction, that I was getting through the instructional leagues and through the minor leagues. And of course, it's the same conversation with Tommy Lasorda as it was with Clint Hurdle and the Rockies and Buddy Bell with the Rockies to Dusty Baker with the Cubs. I'm listing all my managers, but they all had the same message. And that's the point that I'm trying to give you. They used to talk about it all the time. And not every manager was a former outfielder. They were pitching, they all had this idea, but there is one thing that they would consistently say, universally say to all of us, is that we want our outfielders moving together. And what that meant is that if I was playing, if I'm next to Juan Pierre and Juan's playing center field and Juan says, hey, listen, I'm reading this kid swing, this guy's swing right now. He's a little bit late on the fastball. I got a sense that I'm going to move 2 steps to my left or 3 steps to my left. His first words to me, yo, Holly, he'd yell out to me even before the pitch, I'm moving 3 steps to my left, which means, Holly, you need to move 3 steps to your left. That's how we moved. But what you see in travel baseball is that connection isn't quite there. Kids are coming in and playing on teams from all over the place. We see this a lot in South Florida where kids come and go, and that feel for the guy that you're standing next to doesn't exist all that much. And so this is it's much more independent. And so what you tend to see is that the center fielder will he'll go straight out from second base, so he'll go stand somewhere in center field, and you'll just watch those corner outfielders fade. But the center fielder doesn't usually say something to the left fielder or to the right fielder about pinching the gaps. So there's just this immense amount of space out there. And I think for any hitter, and remember, we're talking about everybody here. To your point, Joe, yes, there are always going to be young hitters that are a little bit more advanced, but I want this to be a broad stroke for everybody to understand, because everybody's looking for success. And I don't care if you're 5'4" or 6 foot tall, you're trying to find success on your travel ball team, and you're trying to find your place, and you're certainly trying to establish yourself. What I'm talking about is, as a hitter, giving yourself the best opportunity for success. Who doesn't love a home run? We all love home runs, but not everybody can do it. And I think that's what we're really starting to get to, because as we get through all of this, yeah, sure, a couple of kids catch our attention because they've got something that nobody else on that field has. Well, Ken Griffey Jr. had that too, but I'm not Ken Griffey Jr. I wished I was, but I'm not. So I had to do things a little bit differently to help my game out. Ken had the sweetest swing that we've ever seen. He probably didn't have to work on it all that much, because I feel like God gave it to him and he just ran with it. But the rest of us were really working on our swings each and every day, trying to improve ourselves. So we were always looking for those little advantages as a hitter that would help us. And that is truly one thing that I see in travel baseball that I wish more kids picked up on, is just understanding where do all the hits lie. We used to go to big league ballparks all the time, and you'd find out those little things that worked, and maybe you could use as an advantage. And in my mind, I'll use turf for example, since we were playing on a turf field yesterday. But I used to always think the extra base on turf, especially if you hit like a soft line drive or anything where the ball was going to hit the turf and go up, you could be standing on second base as the outfielder's waiting for the ball to come down after the bounce. So these are all little things that you can pick up on when you get the opportunity to play on all these different fields that we tend to see, especially through travel baseball. So lots of advantages, but I encourage the kids to, wherever you're going to, whatever you're looking to, look around you and see what your circumstances are and what your field is, and see what you can take advantage of.
Great advice. Great advice. I hope people are writing notes down. Holly, as we're getting a little bit pushed for time, I'm going to let you get out of here in a few minutes to get ready for your game. Tell just some of the parents and kids, what are in your preparation? What do you bring out to the field? I think you noted it's about 90-something degrees, 95 degrees up there in Birmingham. How do you prepare? Are you one of those who have those little portable fans? Or you bring a tent? Obviously hydration, but take people through the Todd Hollandsworth travel to the ballpark. What's in your travel kit?
Well, I don't, and since I've gotten so old, I'm not a sitter, I'm a walker. And so I love to walk. I walk to both sides of the field. I walk to if you see me out there, say hi. I'll obviously say hi right back to you. So if you see me there, I'm certainly always willing to talk to anybody. I'm a wanderer. I like to walk. So I walk around basically from foul pole to foul pole. And that's what I enjoy doing. Of course, I'll tend to stay on Trey's side most of the time, but I even go over to the visiting side just because I like to hear the chatter of the parents and the different things that are kind of going on and in the different conversations that you hear, because they are different everywhere you go. Baseball's talked a little bit differently here in Alabama than it is in South Florida. It's talked a little bit differently in Georgia. And so it is a different dynamic, and it is fun to see because everybody has all these different philosophies. But one thing I'll throw out there for the parents, because I did see a little bit of this yesterday, and it reminded me, and I want to remind the parents of this. When your kids are having success, let the kids have success and celebrate with them. Celebrate that success. But when your kid's not doing the job, or remember, you're not playing. You're not a representative of your child. Your child's a representative of you. It's not the other way around. So I think a lot of parents get caught up in this, and I did. You'll start to see frustration. You'll see some anger when their kid doesn't do their thing, or what the parents expected their child to do in that moment. It doesn't happen that way. I would just really encourage parents to think twice about how they kind of approach that, because they always need to remember that they're on display as well in the crowd, and so are their kids. But when children, just remember, these are just kids. I mean, they're teenagers, when they're struggling and they're working through something, I just tend to find that loving conversation and loving encouragement really puts them in a better position to get past anything that they might be struggling with, as opposed to trying to live up to mom and dad's expectations. And that is very, very difficult to do. So it's one thing that I've really kind of taught myself is, of course, my kids look to me and they think, okay, well, dad must have all the answers. I don't always have all the answers. That's the thing. Even as a guy who was given the ability to get it to the big league level and play there for well over a decade, I don't always have all the answers, because I don't get to get in the box anymore. I don't get to always see the game the same, the way that the kids see the game. But we need to encourage them in order for them to get better. I have found in myself that my kids respond much better to loving criticism or loving critiquing, I would even call it, as opposed to saying, that was a terrible at bat. You missed your pitch. Why are we swinging at curveballs in the dirt? But, a lot of times you'll hear that from the parents. So it's a challenge, guys. I would put that out there for parents. Just remember, your kids are trying to do the most difficult thing there really is to do in all of sports, which is hit a baseball, play baseball, excuse me, and be successful every day. It's hard to do. So when the game is over, love them both ways. Love them in the good and love them sometimes even in that bad, because the bad's going to happen. There's going to be bad games. But I find that kids respond to the loving pat on the back and are much more receptive even to criticism or critiquing, if in fact they know that they're still secure in their parents' love. But what I do tend to see sometimes is that, well, we drove 500 miles, or we flew and we've been in the air, and we came here and expected you to go 3 for 3 with a home run today, and you went 0 for 3 with 2 strikeouts. And it's almost like the kid feels like, okay, all of this weight of the world is all of a sudden on my shoulders, and maybe they're not living up to the expectations. Those kids don't need any more added pressure. They're already trying to do it. When they have those games that are big and they're playing well, it's their moment. But I always see that there's sometimes a challenge on the parents when things don't go their way, especially in travel ball, because there is these massive expenses, hotel rooms, Airbnbs, and all this other stuff where people are spending all this money for these moments, and they get a little bit sidetracked because the result isn't exactly what they think it's supposed to be. Remember, it's still baseball, and this is a very, very difficult sport. Even at 14U, 15U, 17U, this is all for their good, but only if your child comes out of it feeling better about it.
No, great advice, and obviously hope people take that to heart. And in closing too, lay off the umpires, everyone. I mean, even it's like I was there the other day in Jupiter. Just quit wearing out the home plate umpire. Not everything's a strike. Not everything's a ball. They're not trying to mess your experience for your kid. They're not trying to lose the game for your team. They're out there, and without them, the games don't go on. So give a little love to the umpires and keep the focus. It's the competition. It's the opportunity. It's the ability to play in a college baseball stadium or a minor league type stadium, and it's all for good fun. Holly, we'll let you go. Anything in closing you want to say before we get out of here?
Now, listen, I know that travel ball season is upon us. Like I said, I just encourage the kids to keep swinging the bats, keep having fun. Remember, I know that travel is not always the easiest thing to do, but there's a lot of fun around this sport. Try to take advantage of every opportunity. Look for those opportunities on the field to be great. It isn't just always in swinging the bat, and we're going to talk about this as we go throughout the year. It can be on the base paths. Lots of stolen bases yesterday. That's a way that you can help your team. That's certainly a way that's going to catch a scout's eye if you're a good base runner, good defender. All of these things matter. Sometimes we get into travel ball and we realize that, sometimes I think the parents look at it, well, I'm here for my kid, but I'm not here for the team. Yep. And that's not doing anybody any good. So I've always found, at least in my experiences and even listening to my older sons and their conversations, our eyes are always attracted to the teams that win. So remember, this is a process. So work backwards from it. You may hear about one kid and he may be on the worst team in travel ball. Well, of course, that kid might be immensely talented. But generally, the way that it works is our ears start to gravitate towards the teams that are playing really, really well. Well, part of being on a team that plays really, really well is everybody understanding their role. And then all of a sudden the attention comes. And then what follows that up is that individual attention. Don't look at it the other way around. I mean, that's the unfortunate part of travel ball that I don't necessarily love, is that we kind of get into this isolation where it's just like picking kids out of the crowd, because this kid looks like he can do something at the next level. These games do matter in terms of understanding how the team concept works, how you can take advantage of what athletes are on your team, whether it's running the bases really well or playing great defense. But winning does matter. It's not just about your kid going 3 for 3 every day or going out there and pitching 4 shutout innings. It is more than that. It's certainly being a good teammate. It's playing the game with integrity, playing the game passionately, but playing the game hard and playing the game the right way. And all of those things can and still can be learned and will be learned if you're willing to do it, even in travel ball. Travel ball doesn't really lend itself to that, but I would encourage you to really kind of talk about it, even amongst the parents and amongst the kids as they're coming together, work together and try to win baseball games. Because the more games you win, you're like, man, that team's 10-0 or that team's 10-1. It catches your attention. Then all of a sudden you're like, okay, well, who must be really, really good on this team? Instead of always thinking about it the other way around, which is, well, we're just here to see so-and-so. I'm here to see this kid. How many times I've talked to a scout in my lifetime where you go to a game and he says, I'm here to see such and such a player. And 4 innings into the game, you'll get a question about another player on the team. And that's a lot of times how this works, is that scouts will go see things and then they'll see other things. And that's where their curiosity is really starting to grow. And next thing you know, they went there to see one person and they're walking away taking bigger and longer notes on another player. So always remember that. Guys are watching, guys are paying attention, but you always want to be there and have that good team concept, if you will.
No, absolutely true. And great words to kind of close this out. Holly, have a good luck to Trey and today and his team. Have a great experience up there. Drive safely. We'll be doing this next week again. Well, actually, next week I'm going to be on vacation, so I'm going to be the one on remote. I'm going to be out in Arizona, but we'll try to do one of these again next week, and as well as we're building the Hitting with Holly podcast here on the ManOn2nd Baseball YouTube channel. And with that, everyone, appreciate you for tuning in. Stay tuned. There's going to be a lot more hitting instructions and videos from Holly as well. And with that, we're going to have a lot of fun with this. And we'll see you in the next video. Thanks for tuning in.
Stay dry, Joe.